Okay, welcome to the 5th Tomlinson Memorial to be held here in KZN. Dunks finds himself amongst some really auspicious presenters in the past, and we know that Dunks is a great orator. We look forward to his presentation, and welcome to all. Just a few housekeeping rules. I think everyone's found where the bathrooms are. So on your left, down between the barrels there. We have dispensed with the meal for the evening, so there's coffee and tea available. It's a simple program for tonight. The speakers will just roll one after the other, so I'm not going to go through the entire program. If you guys can just follow on from each other. Obviously, there's COVID protocols to be followed where possible, please. So always keep safe. We are in level 1, but let's keep safe. And finally, Dunks has recently been awarded the sexiest shoe salesman here at Shongweni Market. So ladies, we're going to ask that you please refrain from catcalling during his speech. That'll be appreciated. And we've always wondered why Dunks has got such a lack of wife. So we look forward to your talk, and welcome and enjoy the evening. Apologies, I'm going to introduce the next speaker, and then from there we'll carry on. So the next speaker is Mr. Prof Jan van Rooyen.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here. My duty this evening is just very short, and I'm just here to welcome everyone here present for this memorial lecture, FR Tomlinson Memorial Lecture. I want to start by welcoming you, especially those of you that have found time, despite the difficult time we're living in, to make it here physically. And I know a lot of people are also joining us online to attend this important lecture. I would like to especially welcome anyone from government departments here, and from the university. We have our DVC, who is also here to grace this occasion, Professor Albert Modi, who is the DVC of the College of Agriculture, Engineering, and Science. And also here present is Professor Mudau, who is also the Dean, School of Agricultural Sciences, School of Agricultural, Earth and Environmental Sciences. We also like to welcome past AEASA, which is Agricultural Economics Association of South Africa President. I'm sure they are attending online, they are not here physically. And also the past presidents and presenters of this memorial lecture. And we have Professor Gerard Othman here also, and his wife Erica, who has been a past president of AEASA and also a past presenter of this prestigious memorial lecture. Professor Mike Line also is joining us also from, I think, New Zealand online. And I think Professor Cheryl Hendricks, also from University of Pretoria, is also online. And I'm sure we have more than 90 people that have logged in, that have indicated that they will join this program online. Please, I just want to welcome you once again. Relax, enjoy the lecture, and have a very good evening. Thank you.
Good evening, members of AEASA Exec, past past presidents of AEASA, DVC, Dean and Head of School, ladies and gentlemen. Before I introduce this evening's FR Tomlinson Commemorative Lecturer, I would like to first acknowledge Christine Cuno and thank her for a substantial contribution towards organising this evening's event. Christine, you've done a fantastic job, and please give her a hand. Lloyd's given you some of the numbers, but today, here, present, we've got over 90 people. We've got another around about 53, I think, registered to join us online. Together, I think that gives us a record attendance for an FR Tomlinson Commemorative Lecture here in KZN and I think elsewhere. So please give yourselves a round of applause as well. Right, now the presenter of this evening's lecture does not need much introduction. Indeed, I think that most of you are here because you, in person or online, because you know Duncan Stewart. And if you do know Duncan Stewart, you probably know that he has a somewhat perverse and irreverent sense of humour that may seem awkwardly misplaced in a person who claims to be committed to social justice. Those are Duncan's words, not mine. But perhaps more importantly, if you do know Duncan, you'll know some of the contributions he's made to rural development in South Africa, and of course, that's why we're here, to honour him in recognition of those contributions. But for the benefit of those of you who don't know him particularly well, I'm going to read a few extracts from what Christine and I put together as in support of our nomination of Duncan for this award. Prof Madars told me he doesn't want the whole thesis, so I'll try and keep it reasonably short. Anyway, Duncan was born in 1957 into a farming family in the Valley of 1,000 Hills, bordering a large community settlement. He soon realised that he was born into privilege, and that his friends around him, although rich in humanity, were relatively disadvantaged. This motivated his vision for a more equal society. He attended an agricultural high school and then completed a BSc Agric majoring in agricultural economics in 1979. The next year, he worked in the Department of Agric and Marketing in Pretoria, followed by 8 years at KwaZulu Department of Agric. He started off in Smallholder Extension and ended up as head of the Agricultural Economics Division. He then during that time, he registered for part-time studies towards an MSc Agric, an MSc Agric in Agric Economics at the University of Natal. He graduated in 1987. The title of his dissertation was An Economic Analysis of Labour Allocation in the Rural KwaZulu Household. His education, work experience, and postgrad research gave him a good understanding of livelihood strategies and resource utilization in rural households, and left him feeling that he was able to contribute meaningfully to achieving a more just society. So in 1989, he founded the Lima Rural Development Foundation, an NGO working towards a more just society through dynamic community engagement and innovative rural development initiatives. After more than 30 years, he continues to serve as the managing director of Lima. Under Duncan's leadership, Lima has grown to become one of the larger rural development NGOs in the country. Lima's work has not only positively impacted on and given hope to many rural families, but has also provided a platform for a number of young graduates, including quite a few budding agricultural economists, to develop fulfilling careers as community development professionals. Throughout his working career, Duncan has maintained a close relationship to UKZN. This relationship has certainly benefited the university, especially its agricultural economics discipline and food security program. For example, for the past 30-odd years, every year Duncan has hosted a field trip for the AGEC 380 class. He has facilitated many postgrad studies. He has sponsored awards for top performing students, and he's also been instrumental in the establishment of the alumni group Friends of UKZN Agriculture. For this association, Duncan has also maintained a close association with AEASA. He had regularly attended its annual conferences. He has served as a chairperson of contributed paper sessions at some of those conferences. He served on the local organising committee for the 2017 conference. He's organised and co-organised numerous workshops and panel discussions at some of those conferences. And he's even co-authored papers and poster papers that have been presented at those conferences. So ladies and gentlemen, there's no doubt in my mind that Duncan Stewart has made a significant contribution to rural development. Lima's success as an agent of change in South Africa is testimony to the high standard of his contributions. His record of participation in agricultural economics at UKZN and in the activities of AEASA show that he clearly is, without doubt, an active participant in our association. He clearly meets the requirements of the award of an FR Tomlinson Commemorative Lecture. Thanks. Congratulations. You thoroughly deserve this honour, and we're looking forward to your lecture.
We've got 30 pages back here. I wasn't sure whether there was going to be enough light on the, yeah. Greg was going to stand behind me with a torch on his cell phone if I couldn't read. Yeah, okay. Good evening. Thanks, Stuart, for those very kind words. Half my speech has now been taken by you, so I'm going to repeat it, but yeah. The accident of birth, your path in life, is invariably cruelly decided by your accident of birth. Can everyone read that? Okay. Have we seen the cover page already? Okay, good. Lekker. You guys, as long as you know the title, that's the important part. I veered completely off it. Okay. As Stuart's told you, I grew up very privileged in the Valley of the Thousand Hills, and all the people around me were rich in. This will eventually come right. I couldn't understand how we have such a I really battled to understand a system that was not based purely on merit, and it seems so unfair. As a student in Maritzburg in the 70s, we used to protest against apartheid and advocate for the opening of universities to all races. When I look now at UKZN, I'm unbelievably proud. A completely transformed high-quality institution, universal access, open to all races, producing large numbers of black graduates that are going to change our lives forever. I'd like to thank my buddies, Albert, Stu, and Steve, for the wonderful, for being part of a cracker team that has made this change possible. Yeah, it's testament to what's been achieved. And this is where Lima's story begins at Varsity. Lima's success has been as a result of a sustainable flow of top-class graduates that have come through the organization in the last 30 years, coming through our system, adding value to the team and growing Lima's capabilities and reputation. And then moving on to other careers, taking with them their development philosophy with them, spreading the gospel of consultation and economic inclusion, and growing the network. Our decision to hire the best graduates has been one of our formulas of success. There are few things that make me more proud than the talented pool of Lima staff and alums. I'll raise a glass to you now. Yeah. We won't ask you to put your hands up, but yeah. Okay. So, we were faced with a seriously skewed society. What could we do to play a role and make it different and make it fractionally less skewed? I ended up in the KwaZulu Department of Agriculture, where Solly Masinga, Agrippa Ndlovu, and Nkosinathi Mthembu decided to take on the role of teaching Mabele Jongos how to do smallholder farmer support. What a revelation to see that what highly committed, resource-poor farmers could achieve and the impact that they had and the opportunities that they provided for their families. So farmer support and rural development is what I decided is where I would try and make my small little difference. And then the bloody masters. I'm not sure whose idea it was, whether it was Elston LaRue, my mentor, or Mike Lyon, my compass. But they were also the ones that made it possible. Strangely, though, I emerged from the tunnel of hell with the level of determination and self-belief that could not have been forged in any other furnace. Now that I had the tools and the foolishness to set up a rural development NGO and bucket loads of support from Mike and my lovely girlfriend at the time, Nikki, who committed herself to Lima first and me next. It's a real honor and a privilege to be here with you all tonight. The fifth in a row. Yeah, sure. It's nice to be out of the house and socializing, and everyone here, people say, I haven't seen that oak for so long, I haven't seen that oak for so long. Yeah. I'm sure there are a lot of people who hope they'll never see me again, but anyway. Good. Okay. I've always found the pronunciation AEASA a little bit affected in Maritzburg. And I love the way Professor Jan van Rooyen calls it Lefsa. Lefsa, it's just so charismatic. I think makes us all feel like real winners and movers and shakers. Yeah. I'm the fifth person in the province to be awarded this wonderful honor. Behind three of my mentor professors. Unfortunately, Leap couldn't make it tonight, but sends his regards to everyone, wishes he could be here. And also Rex Hudson from the sugar industry, very inspiring. He's the only practitioner to be given the award, so I'm super proud. So the Tomlinson Lecture gives an old fart an opportunity to share their AgriCon journey with their friends at LEFSA and to provide some hope and motivation to those that have chosen to take on the baton. Tonight I want to share some theoretical concepts from the social sciences that have proved to be most useful in program implementation. Then I will briefly talk about some of Lima's community development experiences and also about the future and the role that community and stakeholder participation can play in creating a more just and potentially winning nation. I'm not going to talk about COVID and I'm not going to talk about the riots, but I will preach from the gospel of hope, as we know that's the only way forward. So there's the presentation structure. Should we move to the next one, Kathleen? A developmental mindset is grounded in the cultural etiquette of being humble and a pattern of thinking and looking at the world that invites continuous human and organizational transformation. Being a humble agent of change with no fixed or predetermined ideas, never being superior, understanding people's circumstances and giving them the benefit to lead processes that involve them. This is based on the notion of equality, or what our influential Bishop John Colenso called all people being equal in the eyes of God. Subantu and his feisty daughters were probably the founders of a strong liberal tradition in the Midlands. It should be easy for us economists to think this way, as one of the base assumptions in economics is that all entities behave rationally and maximize utility given the constraints that they face. Participatory rural appraisal. Some of the cleverest things in the world have the clumsiest names, and PRA definitely fits that bill. One of the contributing factors to Lima's success has been integrating PRA into most of the work that it does. Developed by sociologists in India in the 70s, PRA is a workshopping technique done with a range of community groups and gives the insiders a platform to state for themselves how they understand the world and how, if they were given an opportunity, how they would make it better. In our experience, every PRA produces some revelation, something new, something that you wouldn't expect comes up as significant. A learned friend of mine calls it knowledge co-creation. Kind of simple. The more questions you ask people that you work with, the more you understand them. The major benefit is that development programs designed through a PRA process are owned and driven by the community. Representative structures and elected through this are invariably contain the movers and shakers within the community. And they are prepared to invest time and effort for broad-based change. PRA produces a majority or a consensus opinion that most accurately reflects the wishes of the people rather than the personal agendas of the elite, many of which have long mastered the art of capture. This purposely designed bottom-up approach promotes community buy-in, project success, and long-term sustainability. This is a very complicated section, so any of you guys who are ADD like me, it would be a good time to go and have a leak. I'm sure the reason they call this new, well done, James. James has got a small bladder. Yeah, that's where the smallness stops, James. I'm sure the reason they call this new institutional economics is because all the excitement happened after I graduated. So everything that I learned about it, I siphoned across from my buddies, Dave Thompson, Mike Lyon, and lots of other postgrads that we helped over the years. New institutional economics is a study of enabling and constraining effects of formal and informal rules on the behavior of individuals and groups. It focuses on the social and legal norms that undertake economic activity. What are the rules of the game? Who do they favor, and are they the most efficient? What minor changes can be made to arrangements to make them more fairly distribute the benefit flows to marginalized groups and to create win-win efficiencies? Lima asks these questions regardless of which sector we work in. A new economic theory on its own doesn't really cut it. Okay? What you need to impress your buddies is some juicy jargon. So some of the ideas and concepts that new institutional economics has come up with includes agency theory, transaction costs, property rights, and accounts for asymmetric power, externalities, opportunism, free riding, adverse selection, and moral hazard. I love that one. Okay. Aren't those cool? Okay. Importantly, it's a multidisciplinary bringing together of the social sciences together with law, commerce, and history, which for us as development practitioners is the way we understand the world as a diverse, cluttered, and competitive space. It argues that a country's social, legal, and political institutions determine the economic performance, and that governance and constitutional arrangements determine the performance of organizations and firms and community groups. Basically, the way we do things is not necessarily the best way, because there are often improvements that can be made to that. On an individual level, we often forget that the development of collegial relationships are an essential precursor to any meaningful partnership. A minimum level of trust is necessary between people for them to transact. Social capital. Social capital is another concept from sociology that was outlined by Robert Salisbury in 1969, and then became a huge, big World Bank buzzword in the 90s. It refers to communities with a high level of generalized trust and at the same time protecting free choice to create a more cohesive society. This has been expanded into the notion of bonding, bridging, and linking social capital between groups, within groups, between groups, and with public officials. Long-established urban and rural communities often have high levels of trust, functionality, and reduced transaction costs that substantially enhance the ease of doing business. Outsiders and potential investors tend to underestimate the goodwill that exists. As with PRA, civic engagement can tap into the social capital with positive outcomes for politics, economics, and society. We need to create a society of listeners and talkers and address the mistrust and ignorance created by our divided past. And we need to blend the strengths of all the social sciences together when we're doing community development work. Practitioners, public officials, and academics stand to gain a tremendous amount by working more closely together. Corporate shared value. In 2011, Harvard academics Porter and Kramer introduced the concept of shared value. This was defined as policies and operating practices that enhance the concept of competitiveness of a company, while simultaneously advancing the economic and social conditions in the communities in which it operates. Shared value focuses on identifying and expanding the connection between societal and economic progress. Businesses have really approached societal issues from a value perspective and have treated these as peripheral matters. Companies need to understand the broader business environment surrounding their major operations. Put simply, investing in your staff, your supply chain, and your near-plant communities in a wide range of social and economic programs makes good business sense. It drives competitive advantage and improves the bottom line. Being a good corporate citizen should go beyond corporate social investment, CSI, and should be institutionalized into all aspects of the business, as this has the potential to drive profitability and sustainability. Some progressive South African corporates are really starting to catch on. Traditionally, corporate social investment has been a separate, isolated program that does not support or improve the corporate value chain. CSI is discretionary or in its response to external pressure, separate from profit maximization, based on personal preferences and focused on doing good. On the other hand, corporate shared value produces economic and societal benefits, company and community value creation, and is company specific. Shared value is integral to the value chain of an organization and profit maximization. It is usually internally generated and realigns the company budget in the same way that enterprise development can be driven by the supply chain. Creating shared value can be driven by a realigned social investment program. Just as companies need numbers people to be successful, neglecting the people's people in an organization is also foolish. Thanks for the line, Dave. We're now going to sober it up a little bit, seeing I'm the only one drinking Coke. Chronic malnutrition, one way of measuring change in developmental outcomes is to track levels of food security. Many of you saying, Dunks, don't go there, this is not the place for the faint-hearted. For decades, 1/4 of South Africans have suffered chronic malnutrition. 1/4 or persistent childhood stunting, and continue to do so. Stunted children are unable to fulfill their physical and cognitive potential and are predisposed to obesity and chronic illness. The socio-economic impact of having 1/4 of your population operating below par is immense. Before you even think of productivity and international competitiveness, the impact of NCDs on our health system is substantial. I was hoping today to introduce you to one of my girlfriends, Cheryl Henricks, but she is only online. I don't know why she's hiding. One of the leading academics in the field of food security. She was going to be here with us tonight and flash us a lovely smile, but she's probably out there on one of those screens at the back. Over the years, Lima has collaborated with Cheryl and her multidisciplinary colleagues in a number of household surveys and consultative processes. This research has confirmed persistently high malnutrition rates, both stunting and obesity, and is beginning to shed light on the multitude of factors impacting household food nutrition. I cannot overstate our need to understand this problem, as the national data clearly shows that we have failed our children and our vulnerable communities. Reducing terms of trade. It's estimated that 4 million households supplement their income from and their diets from small-scale farming. There have been a lot of different forces at play. Deregulation, corporatization, and competition in agriculture have negatively affected farm workers and smallholders. Employment in the sector is 1/6 of what it was in 1990. Okay? Rural people seem to have experienced all the hazards and none of the benefits of liberalized markets. Climate change, the HIV epidemic, neglect of rural development, poorly conceptualized and managed state programs have made life really a lot tougher for rural communities. Smallholders are overlooked and viewed as inevitable casualties of modernization. Little attention is paid to the role of revitalizing local economies, generating employment, and enhancing household food security. The national data appear to be telling us that social grants have only just compensated for the rural poor in the losses in their terms of trade and maintaining incomes and nutritional levels of 40 years ago. What researchers find when they dig deep into rural communities is highly knowledgeable, resourceful people that have had to adapt continuously to deteriorating terms of trade. Endowed with knowledge, assets, capabilities, and sources of resilience inherent in their environmental and social systems. They could play powerful allies in developing rather than in development rather than as recipients or beneficiaries. Their realities and experiences should be informing good policy and practice. Engagement, collaboration, and partnerships are necessary steps to progressive realization of the right to food. Researchers are proposing the creation of local and national platforms where citizens can engage directly with policymakers. There's an important role for social movements and civil society in trying to deepen the democratization of the development system. We have a constitutional imperative to respect and protect existing livelihoods. Indigenous local knowledge can be combined wonderfully with Western science to produce solutions for many seemingly intractable problems. This was not said by me, but by Christine McIntyre, whose PhD thesis we helped facilitate should inspire us all for a hope for a different future. We're now going to get on to all the practical stuff. Lima 101, the pitch that I do to donors every day of the week. Lima is a. Lima's objectives are to constantly seek partners that are wanting to invest in rural communities, and whatever form that may be. Once this is done, we seek to maximize the impact of this investment on the host community through participative planning, setting up representative community structures, developing local capacity, and making full use of local skills, talent, and resources. Our implementation methodology invariably consists of embedding skilled rural development professionals within the area to support the community through a process of institutional change. The community themselves are empowered to create and drive their own ideas and given confidence to actively participate in the change process as decision makers themselves, rather than being passive recipients. We're back on ESCOM, guys. Yeah. So when you go outside for a pee, you won't hear the echo of the gen. Passive recipients. At the end of this process, the community is enriched with skills and capacity that would not have been possible in a less inclusive process. When we seek to repeat this with new investors in a range of sectors with a wide net of stakeholders, eventually the community develops a reputation for being participative, cooperative, and willing to collaborate with outsiders. So Lima has developed a model that is multi-sectoral with a large number of skilled field workers and a wide network of stakeholders, changing people's lives in a number of different ways with the intention of remaining invested within an area for a long period of time. This model has been amazingly successful, with Lima peaking in 2017 to a staff of over 150 people and a turnover of 130 million, making us one of the larger NGOs in the sector. We have a presence at the moment in all 9 provinces and a reasonably large team in Lesotho. We at Lima are thankful and humbled by the opportunities that have been given to us by our donors, both from the public and private sector. Lots of you are here tonight. Many thanks. Over the years, we have developed close to 20 value offerings within the organization. Tonight, I'm going to share 5 of these with you. Smallholder farmer support has long been Lima's flagship project and the foundation on which it was built. As mentioned before, over 4 million families supplement the incomes from agricultural production. Farmer support, previously called agricultural extension, refers to directly linking isolated peasant farmers into the agricultural value chain through linkages with inputs, credit, mechanization, information, and markets. Development practitioners have long believed that this is an important vehicle for lifting households out of poverty. In 2015, a research team from UKZN measured the direct economic impact of this activity on recipient communities and measured an internal rate of return in excess of 500%. Wow, that seems massive. Can it possibly be so high? The more we've thought about it since, the more we realize that this is the right kind of magnitude. There's ample evidence of sugar, timber, and cotton growing communities that have catapulted themselves into a totally different developmental trajectory. Add this to Cheryl and Mike's research in 2006 that found that economic multipliers for every locally produced rand is in excess of 28%, and you have a double whammy that makes an investment in agriculture a sure bet. Economists view education and agricultural extension as a public good, meaning that the benefits from the investment accrue to the recipient and to society at large. As a result, public investment is strongly encouraged in these goods. Lima runs a farmer support program in over 20 municipalities with 15,000 participating smallholders over 6 provinces. Private and public donors have allowed us to sustain a presence in some districts for over 2 decades. With the average 3-year funding program, this means continuous pitching and reinvention and sustaining anchor donors over long periods. Public sector contributions have come from municipalities, the Department of Rural Development, and the Jobs Fund. We have had less success with getting contributions from any of the provincial departments of agriculture, which often perceive us as rivals rather than as potential partners. This is unfortunate, as we have partnered successfully with a number of other public institutions in a complementary and seamless manner. Land reform. Lisa, are you with us? Okay. In the post-liberation period, land reform was expected to produce a large economic dividend for the previously marginalized. Lima was closely involved in the implementation methodology and design. Much of the departmental work at the time was very well implemented. The restitution process was run by a separate institution and that did not fully utilize the learnings from the DLA. Demands for more transactions often resulted in underinvestment in community consultation, business training, and institutional and governance arrangements. This resulted in the post-transfer contraction of many going concerns and reduced livelihoods and increased hardship for farm worker communities. Many land reform expectations have not been fulfilled, but a large number of properties have been transferred, so the journey of redress has been started. But stakeholders now need to be mobilized to create more ideal outcomes. Considerable opportunity still exists for the harnessing of the skills and the social capital of impacted communities, and mobilizing for improved business structure, governance, and practice across projects. Many agricultural groups have been prepared to invest in the consultation and support structures, demonstrating the intent to make a positive difference and to restore lost productivity. In short, there are more than enough land reform communities with goodwill and capacity and reputable business partners with the right mindset to revive productivity, provided an environment is created for majority mobilization to champion the rights of the group rather than the narrow interests of the elite. By the time I look up, you've gone. Nice one, Kathleen. Lima's second largest division has been in the infrastructural sector of engineering and construction. The sector was initially chosen because of its complementary role in a productive economy and its ability to absorb large numbers of unskilled people. The construction sector comes from a history of exclusivity, but programs driven by the public sector, such as the CRDB gradings and the BEE incentives, have widened the reach considerably. Marginalized communities are often packed with skilled artisans who, if supported correctly, have the ability to deliver high quality, cost-effective projects. The work provides more than a short-term livelihood and enhances skills, confidence, and networks. Members of the Lima team see themselves as systems and methodology innovators in the construction sector and are constantly seeking alternative contractual methods of delivering and institutionalizing these to be adopted by the formal sector. Some of the methods that we use is placing the project recipient at the forefront of the project as client in order to co-manage the supervision processes. In other words, making use of the embedded capacity that exists within all families. Reducing the number of layers of supervision, substantially reducing costs. Making maximum use of local skills, service providers, and materials. The construction sector could benefit from new institutional economics that studies the constraining and enabling effects of formal and informal contractual behavior, seeking efficiency-enhancing rules of the game, replacing the conventional adversarial and litigatory environment towards relational contracts, with terms that incentivize compliance and adaptation to deliver a project successfully at lower cost. It's possible to draw up agreements that fairly serve the interest of all parties. The Department of Human Settlement's quantum method, as well as the Enhanced People's Housing Program, go a long way towards achieving this. The traditional power balance in the South African construction industry has strongly favored the professions over the trades. The tone of the JBCC and the GCC clearly demonstrate this bias in their intention to transfer risk to the trade component. The cost implications of this type of contracting model are considerable. Lima's construction projects have included labour-based roads, community water supply, sanitation, agricultural infrastructure, appropriate irrigation, rainwater harvesting, low-cost housing, township densification, and construction of properly designed and registered early childhood development centres, or creches. Our latest foray is into upgrading of informal settlements and piloting of a user-charged sanitation facility for informal settlements. Public employment programs were used extensively as an economic recovery program after the Great Depression, and if properly managed and designed, could be appropriate in our local context. In the 90s, Lima was a leader in labour-based road construction, and we set up 80 traditional authorities in KwaZulu with their own teams, upgrading kilometres of rural tracks and all-weather roads. These programs fell out of favour with government, and publicly employed labour is now used only for minor road maintenance. In 2007, Lima was very privileged to be involved with the presidency in the piloting of the Community Works Programme. The CWP employed members of communities for 8 days per month. The program copied from a successful project in India that provided work in the construction sector. As community needs and people's skills are diverse, we designed a model with 4 quadrants. Central to the design was a home-based care team that undertook a census baseline of all households and did a vulnerability assessment. This team would then provide ongoing care to the vulnerable households that were identified. The second team was trained in organic gardening, working with those vulnerable households and also in schools, clinics, and ECD centres. The third team a construction team was trained and deployed in the maintenance of community facilities, and an education team was employed to assist teachers at schools and ECD centres. Lima remained involved with the community work program for more than a decade, setting up 40 local municipalities and serving as lead agent in 3 provinces. In our experience, the social benefits of a well-designed and well-managed CWP process are unsurpassed. So even you get a mention here, Lise. In 2014, in partnership with the Department of Social Development and the Social Security Agency, a Lima team led by Lisa Del Grande and Mike Aliber researched international public recruitment programs and implemented a district model in 6 areas. This comprised 2 facilitators working back to back. One served as a career counselor, taking unemployed youth through a case management process of personal growth and preparation for opportunities in skills development, further education experience, work experience, and entrepreneurship. The second facilitator canvassed the recruitment of local stakeholders to provide opportunities for candidates identified by the career counsellor. In essence, Lima established local recruitment agencies funded by the public and private sector to help the youth bridge the gap, the chasm between them and the economy. The project was successful, and the key element was the private sector's willingness to buy in, a process often facilitated by proactive local chambers. In 2017, SASSA fell on difficult times and decided not to continue with the investment. Fortunately, however, RCL Foods have given us the opportunity to replicate the model in 2 of their near plant communities with considerable promise for scaling up. It's been a wonderful full privilege over the last 40 years to be part of a new, exciting, and extremely broad-based, multidisciplinary sector that has grown and matured into a calling and a profession for many of us. We've seen stronger and better defined understanding of human and community development. All the subsectors, education, health, livelihoods, environment, water, land reform, social services, food, infrastructure, enterprise, and human self-belief have developed their own systems and value-enhancing institutional practice that is well-defined and better understood than it and has been adopted as conventional practice. We have improved understanding of inclusivity and best practice. Don't get me wrong, we're far from delivering to our marginalized communities, but we have progressed reasonably well along a path in most of the subsectors. Our knowledge and understanding of implementation systems has improved, and many of these have been institutionalized and become convention. It is the early part of the journey, but we are growing and developing the tools and the means of creating a more just and equal society. So there's only one more slide that stands between you guys and the pudding and the coffee. When Greg suggested Portuguese tarts, I thought it was going to be a live show. Girls aren't supposed to find that funny, Jenny. So, so let's see if we can make any sense of all of this. So firstly, equality is a lacquer concept, and I don't think any of us have an issue with that. Okay? All the research, however, seems to be pointing to a far more civic engagement than we are used to as a society. Okay? We tend to want to do good for people rather than with them. Okay? All the programmatic stuff that I've shared with points to solutions to economic development being locally derived. In each of our 250 local municipalities, we need to get together and make our own plans. But to do that, we need to strengthen bonds between us. Make friends, build trust, consult deeply, reach consensus, and then put it together. Many districts have already traveled a long way on this path. as a result of very strong local players. The solutions to economic growth and social stability have to be homegrown for them to stick and for them to survive. Organized agriculture and all our other civil society organizations have a tremendous opportunity to mobilize civic engagement and development. Is it really necessary for me to go back to the title? Okay. Economics is about human development, or is it a complete no-brainer? Okay. Talking about no-brainers, how about Porter and Kramer saying that successful businesses are embedded in successful communities? Can you imagine that it took us 2011 years to come up with that idea? Okay. Did we really expect to create islands of success and seas of desperation? The truth, however, is the world has become a dehumanized place, and we're no longer putting us in the middle. We have what it takes to be a successful nation. But what we need to work hard on is the self-belief. We need to redevelop a bloody-mindedness for hope and success and stop blaming the system. We have done it before and we're going to do it again, but this time more closely together. Economic development is a team sport, and we all need to participate as equals. It's time to engage, knowing that we have long had a shared vision. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dunks. Always as inspirational, authentic, and sexy as ever. There's time for a few questions, and this is really time to test to see whether Duncan should be awarded the professorship in the University of Life. I think there's no doubt that Duncan's experience, his passion for developing people has been very evident from his talk. So I think the way we'll deal with it, we'll take some questions from the floor initially, and then I'm sure we'll be getting a few from the Zoom session as well. So open up to the floor for any comments or questions.
Yes, thanks for that inspiring talk. I want to challenge you, and I want to say subsistence farming is a perpetuation of poverty. What do you say?
Take some more questions. I don't like that one.
Any further questions, comments?
Duncan, thank you so much for the presentation you just did. My name is Clayton from SAK Growers. The question I have revolves around the model reducing terms of trade for communities. You spoke about farmers who obviously revitalize economies by generating employment and food security. I just wanted to understand your views on perhaps do you see collaboration and social cohesion as tools to be used as well for farmers, for white commercial farmers to work maybe with, say, land reform farmers and even small-scale holders? What are your comments on that?
Okay, we'll take one more from the floor, if there are. John?
If you could, talking again about the balance of trade, if you could ask the government to do 3 things, what would they be?
I was told not to have it. Yeah, I was told not to have a question and answer session. Now I know why. Yeah. It's much easier to stammer and read it out than it is to answer questions. Yeah, Albert. Yeah. Being a small-scale farmer must be tough. The rural poor in this country, don't have it easy. But the small-scale farmers are the best off of all of them, okay? Because that a little bit of money to pay tech fees, and then the children are on a totally different trajectory after that, okay? So that was basically, Glantine, what I was trying to say, is that as a society and community, we haven't been talking across sectors and stakeholders, and we haven't been engaging publicly. And the excellence that exists, okay, everywhere in isolated silo pockets is massive, okay? But the interaction between those excellences is not, okay? So the potential that we have as a nation to build a successful, thriving economy is high, but we just missing the penetration and the linkage. John, three things that you would want other than cigars? I would only want cigars. Yeah. What your question?
Three things you would tell the government about policy in terms of the trade balance thing.
Yeah, well, they all in that. They're all there. Okay, improved. Invest in smallholder farmer support. Okay, properly designed programs. And talk and ask and listen before you react. Involve people in it. Bring them in and make them part of the equation. Okay. Don't give generous programs out and don't treat them as beneficiaries and recipients. Treat them as partners. Okay. Allow them to determine the framework of the intervention, and let them lead that process.
Christine, any questions off the Zoom session? I'm sure Prof Lyon's got something tricky for Duncan.
Nothing from Mark yet, but we do have a question from Professor Hussein Shimalis. He says agriculture is a key sector to attract employment and community development. How can agriculture further absorb labor and create significant, let me just see what the rest of the question is, significant employment in South Africa, including in KwaZulu-Natal?
Any questions from the floor? Go ahead.
In terms of creating mega projects in rural areas, based on the fact that we've got better development finance than IECs, DBSAs, with the aim of creating jobs, how will the Lima get involved in terms of the capacity that the human resources development?
So that's a question I can get my head around. So mega projects need to be introduced to the people. They need to get involved. They need to tell you how they want it done. And they need to lead that process. And coming in and putting in 50,000 hectares of maize in Mount Ferrer, okay, as a government project, okay, it's not going to help the people in Mount Ferrer, other than the people who sell diesel to the tractors, okay. So whatever you do as an intervention, okay, it requires some form of consultation and some form of co-design, okay? And it requires you as the investor developer to step back and allow people to run that thing themselves, okay? Obviously with your oversight, okay? But there is no way of doing development other than with the people themselves. Otherwise, it won't stick when there's no more no more money to replant the maize in Mount Ferrer. Okay, it'll be gone, and the thorn trees will come back again. Okay. The first question was about labor absorption in agriculture. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. That's why I was asking the PhD behind me if he had an answer to that question. And he was scratching his head and saying, yeah. For once he wasn't scratching his beard. It's not easy. The unemployment rate in this country is double as high as the second worst in the world. And we have got our pricing wrong in terms of our capital labor relative prices. And we've got PhDs in agricultural economics searching everywhere for work. Things are extremely, extremely tough. And quick fixes around labor absorption aren't simple.
Sorry, before I come to you, Christine.
We have another question. We'll wait for Pumelele to put their question in again. The Zoom guys can hear each other, but not us. Matlu Kalaba asks, in more than 3 decades of your involvement with communities, what have you observed as an important innovation? And if you have, do you think it can be sustained or integrated with, looking into the future of digitization and the fourth industrial revolution? Then there's another question from Teresa, if you would like me to ask that now.
Yeah.
Duncan, in terms of community demand-driven projects and design, what robust options for community co-investment, and following from that, how would you like community savings groups involved?
I was advised not to do this question and answer session. Patrick, we need some help here, bud. Lovely to see you again, Patrick. Can we have them again, Christine?
Yes.
Digitization, sure, digitization. So the world's changed. It's a very, very different place. Back in 83, we used to drive 50 Ks out to go and see the Nduna and ask him if he was available next Tuesday. Okay, and the costs of doing business and the costs of working with large groups have been reduced quite substantially as a result of far improved communication. So the biggest problem with smallholders was that they, because of the extremely high transaction costs and the costs of dealing with 500 people with 1 hectare each rather than one person with 500 hectares, is that the cost of dealing with those large numbers of people was massive. What digitalization has helped is reduce the transaction costs substantially, and it's now much easier to deal with larger groups of people. Okay. I know that wasn't the answer to the question, but I thought it was quite clever.
Go ahead.
What's 4RRR mean anyway, after all?
Duncan, I'll try and give you one to lob you one that you can just hit out the park, you know,
okay,
for a final one. In 30 years of being involved in rural development, you know, when one gets the feeling that rural development and rural communities are so dependent on the elders, on the old gogos and the elders in those communities driving livelihoods and care and so on. When you talk about resourcefulness, about resilience and so on in communities, are you seeing the same resourcefulness and resilience in the younger generations? Or are you seeing that younger generations really just want to get out of there and move to the city?
Kathy would like to answer that question. Where are you, Kathy?
Oh, I'm sorry, Duncan.
No. I was chatting to her earlier. Where are you, Kathy? Yeah. Do you want to answer it, Kathy? Tell us what happened to you last week. Yeah, people are amazing things. There's the will to survive, the will to succeed, the large number of educated young people that we have, the enthusiasm. For 40 years, people have been trying to tell me that, you know that the young people aren't really interested in agriculture. That's absolute nonsense, okay? And what happened to us in the 90s is that we lost our middle-aged people, the breadwinners, the HIV took out the interlinking generation between the older and the younger generation, and through that process, a lot of oral history was lost. Okay, and it's absolutely essential that agricultural extension and community development programs come in and provide that knowledge that has been lost. Okay, so we think oral tradition is a good thing, and that if we taught people how to plant mealies 50 years ago, why do we need to teach them again today? That's really crazy. Okay, yeah. Agriculture is not the only game in town. Okay, but 40 years ago it was a good starting point, and now it remains so. Okay.
Okay, I think we'll take one last question from Christine at the back there. Okay, everyone's pointing this way. And then one from Christine. Your last two, Dunks.
Thank you for an awesome conversation. The real money is in conversion of the raw ingredient product into a value add. It also allows for a growth of those who've gone through more education than their parents to take what they've got in matric or post-matric in a college and then apply it locally. To what extent have you included value addition in agricultural products in your thought process and the movement forward?
Yeah, so these things get spoken about a lot, okay? The agricultural processing industry in this country is extremely competitive, and the barriers to entry are substantial, okay? Yeah, a lot can be done, but it's tough in the agri-process value chain. Okay, I haven't seen a lot of examples of things that have stuck and worked. Okay.
Okay, last question from Zoom, from Pumalele, who says, firstly, I wanted to say that I'm one of the people that was offered a great opportunity to work for Lima immediately after graduation. Thanks to Duncan and Lima for that. The participatory rural appraisal approach has been the tool I've held dear to my heart. However, the more we do it internally, I think communities are starting to ask for support based on the programs we have offered them in the past. Do you think the PRA process would still be effective if conducted by an external service provider versus the implementer?
Yeah, this whole thing about relationships between development agencies or corporates and communities and corporates and then communities as to whether they themselves should be engaging directly with those communities or whether they should have an independent conduit between the one and the other is quite a big debate. Okay, so the animosity and the broken expectations that exist between some communities and some embedded corporations is quite high. Okay, and there's often a history of bad blood and poor and misunderstandings and rumors and all sorts of things. So in a situation like that, bringing in an independent that is seen as not being tainted by the corporate thinking is often a good idea. Okay, I don't see any reason why corporates shouldn't themselves, okay, if they had if they could buy in the right skills, leading those processes themselves. But you need to have the right practitioners doing it. Okay, but in many cases, the bad blood that exists between communities and some corporations is of such a nature that it can only be fixed with an independent.
Okay, thanks. We'll bring the question and answer session to an end. Dunks, you speak about participation, teamwork, us, inclusiveness. The one thing you haven't spoke about is the law of Duncan. And could you define the law of Duncan for us? Let's work like a team and do it my way. And that's key to Duncan's success. Over to Prof Wortman for the closure.
Right, Professor Modi, Professor Mudau, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks to Duncan. Duncan, thank you very much for an insightful and inspiring Tomlinson Memorial Lecture. I think this lecture is based on your many years of practical experience in the development field. You know, I've always been impressed with Duncan's achievements in promoting development initiatives throughout South Africa. After working for various organizations for a few years, Duncan developed a clear vision of what he wanted to do with his future career. And it took a lot of guts, determination, and passion to start Lima and to manage it successfully for over 30 years. I think that's quite an achievement. Duncan has, through Lima, added considerable value to development efforts across South Africa. And Duncan, we are all appreciative of your efforts and wish you, Lima, and all your development initiatives all the very best for the future. Duncan, your Tomlinson Memorial Lecture this evening is a testament, I think, to your passion for human development, which is a noble objective. And I, as an academic, I expect your lecture to attract many citations once it's published in Agricon. Thank you once again for an outstanding Tomlinson lecture. And it's a great honor for me now to hand over the Tomlinson Memorial Lecture Medal on behalf of our association. Congratulations.